knew kind of behind closed doors the conversation was beginning to happen. And then when the law changed, we kind of opened those doors and said, okay, let's have this conversation. And then there's this flurry of people that said, actually, yeah, I have a private prescription. And this is what I found, and this is how helpful it's been. And for a lot of people as well that have, when you're having lots of opioids, when you're on medication to counteract the effects of the opioids, he said it's simplified everything as well. So that feedback for us was not only have they found that it's worked, it's meant that they could come off other things as well.
The last resort. Living with a condition like Ehlers-Danlos Syndrome, or EDS, is a battle for 1 in 500 people across the UK. However, like cannabis, there's a lack of education, understanding, and awareness of the illness and how to treat it. Coupled with the fact that many sufferers have an adverse reaction to different medications, many are turning to medical cannabis, often as a last resort. We speak to Sarah Hamilton, Advice and Information Manager at Ehlers-Danlos Support UK, to find out more. Hello and welcome to the Lobsterpot podcast. I'm Dave Barton. I'm your host, someone who does know stuff. This is my nice little segue into our introducing a guest today. We have Sarah Hamilton, who is the Information and Advice Manager at the, I'm going to say it right, Ehlers-Danlos Support UK charity. Did I say that right, Sarah?
You did. You nailed it.
Yes. How are you? Good to meet you.
Good, thanks. Yeah, just looking forward to Christmas and not prepared at all. Like I think most people aren't.
I think that's the way. So tell us more. So we met at the Medical Cannabis Conference about a month ago, and obviously you were on a panel there. But tell us a little bit more about Ehlers-Danlos, EDS for the like me, people who just can't say it. So tell us more about the condition, and then we'll kind of get into a little bit about how cannabis can be beneficial for people with the condition.
Brilliant, thanks. Yeah, so it's a bit of a complex one, but basically the easiest way of describing it is that the mortar between the bricks is faulty, it's fragile, so everything's wobbling. We see hypermobility throughout the entirety of the body. So there's 13 different types of EDS as well, just to kind of complicate things even more. And then there's hypermobility spectrum disorder that's very closely linked as well. Again, we shorten that to HSD because they like to put as many words in these things as possible. So it's just much easier to have the acronyms. But essentially, it's a connective tissue disorder. The collagen is faulty, and collagen is kind of in every part of us. So our joints, our skin, our organs, and it's too stretchy, it's not doing its job. So in terms of kind of symptoms or what people experience, if we look at the most common type, which is the hypermobile type, we see frequent dislocations, we see issues with skin, healing, organ prolapse, gut issues, bladder issues. It's kind of an extensive list. And what's really interesting about the condition as well is that person to person, it affects people very differently. Most people suffer from pain and fatigue with it as well. And there's not really much known about the management of it. There isn't currently an NHS pathway either in terms of getting diagnosed, getting managed, and where to go from there.
How many people have it in the UK?
For the hypermobile type, we're looking at about 1 in 500 was the last data. So it's not rare. It's not a rare condition. For the other types, they are rare, but they also have much more succinct diagnostic pathways and management pathways, and they tend to be picked up when people are a lot younger as well, because of the symptoms are very visible and extreme. And I think that's a big thing to take on board, that it's an invisible condition. You look well, you often look fine, so people don't believe that there's lots going on inside as well.
No, I mean it's something you don't hear about a lot. I certainly don't. But again, it's the sort of thing that you might not recognize that someone is suffering from it. Maybe because they're managing it well. What are some of the sort of current treatments, I guess, other than medical cannabis, which we'll come on to currently for a lot of people? Again, when it affects people differently, is that the same with the medication as well? People can just have different reactions to it.
Yeah, absolutely. And a lot of the information that we get fed back from the community, especially when it comes to pain medication, either it's not worked or it's been too effective, or they're reaching a point now, especially on opioids, where they've upped and upped and upped, and now they've kind of peaked. There's nowhere to go from here. And although things like physio can be really helpful, hydrotherapy, etc., when you're dealing with, say, nerve pain, or you're dealing with injury pain, you've dislocated your shoulder again, and that's an acute pain, it's really difficult to find management for it. And the doctors as well, you go to the doctor and they just go, I don't know what to do. I don't know how to make this better and what to put in place.
That's really interesting. So, I mean, so how's kind of medical cannabis kind of entered the frame with EDS, and how many people are kind of using it? And is it the sort of thing a lot of people are using with the condition? Are they really openly discussing it, or is it a little bit different?
It used to be, I think, like a lot of charities, we kind of shied away from the conversation. We knew kind of behind closed doors the conversation was beginning to happen. And then when the law changed, we kind of opened those doors and said, okay, let's have this conversation. And then there's this flurry of people that said, actually, yeah, I have a private prescription. And this is what I found, and this is how helpful it's been. And for a lot of people as well that have, when you're having lots of opioids, when you're on medication to counteract the effects of the opioids, they said it's simplified everything as well. So that feedback for us was, not only have they found that it's worked, it's meant that they could come off other things as well. And we kind of went, oh, actually, this is something we want to get way more involved in. Anything that helps our community, we want to, step into and get involved in and hear back from them about the impact that it's having, and people being able to get those private prescriptions. As we know, getting an NHS prescription is just not really a possibility, but if we can support people when they're going through private prescriptions, it's a step in the right direction. And I think as well, it's been very community led. It's been the community that come forward and said, this is something we want to hear about, this is something we want to know about. And everything that we've done in terms of, say, the panel that we attended and things like that has been really positively received, which just goes to show that the conversation is happening and is happy to happen as well.
Yeah, no, absolutely. I think, I mean, from the perspective of sort of cost and, private prescriptions, and I guess if people with EDS are they kind of able to work a lot of the time, or condition permitting, again, how does that kind of, I mean, is there kind of support in terms of, helping people afford the cost and things like that? Or is that something that is kind of outside of your remit? Or are these some of the issues that you find a lot of patients commonly encounter?
Yeah, I would say that the biggest hurdle is cost. A huge proportion of our community are on benefits. Benefits are not enough really to pay for a private prescription. And although the cost has kind of reduced in terms of private prescriptions, it's still so much money. And if, say, you initially are in a position where you get a private prescription and then you're not able to, then you're kind of back to square one with, where do I go from here if I now can't afford my prescription? We're unfortunately not a grant giving charity, so we don't have the ability to help with paying for things. And we understand as well that that's, it often leads people to go down an illicit route, which obviously is not something that we, want people to go down. That's not the route that we want people to access. And it's a really difficult one, because people often call up and say, it's something I'm really interested in, and I've spoken to lots of people and they find it beneficial, but I simply can't afford it. And it's a really difficult position to be in, to then say to them, I'm really sorry, but that's where it ends here. There's nothing we can do about it currently. And it is a massive shame when it could be helping and it could be making a difference potentially to that person, to say, it is just very expensive.
No, absolutely. And again, when you think about, well, the way in which, I guess, the medical community are kind of, again, their awareness of EDS as a condition, and how well known is it? And I guess by token, I guess if a lot of sort of GPs, are kind of thinking around the idea of prescribing different medication, I mean, cannabis is not going to be their go-to.
Yeah, exactly. And I mean, we have a lot of doctors aren't aware of it. They're not aware of the condition. They're also not aware of medicinal cannabis. So kind of a double whammy there. And often there's a big misunderstanding of it as well. Oh, you're just a bit bendy. I don't see how this can be causing you pain. We have gymnasts, they're fine. And you're like, okay, well, if my shoulder wasn't hanging out of place, then I'd agree with you, but it is, therefore it's a problem. Or that, you know, you've had bladder issues where you're having to self-catheterize and things. Like it's a very physical condition, so it's always very baffling when it's dismissed. And the same with kind of medicinal cannabis. I think most patients and most of the community feel incredibly nervous to even broach that conversation, and that doctors, you know, would they rather go down an opioid route? And often they don't. They do say, you know, I don't want to send you down that route. It's a really difficult route to go down, and not, you know, it's one difficult to come back
with its own with its own stigma as well. And you know, and again, I think as we sort of discussed before, there's so many. I mean, my understanding of the kind of opioid crisis are very much informed by a lot of the things that have been on TV recently, and you know, understanding how the impact of it has been on the US. I don't think we have it to the same extent here, but you know, you get enough of a sense of, you know, these are highly addictive substances that people, you know, like you say, struggle to come back from. It's not a great route for anyone. So anything, but again, cannabis does not have the same kind of impact in the same way. But I mean in a negative sense, you know, it's not addictive in the way that again, I guess that's up for debate to some extent, but you know, it has a lot more benefit to it. It's plant medicine. It's, you know, it's not, you know, highly addictive in the way that opioids can be. Are those some of the issues that are kind of being discussed by patients in sort of forums and communities and sort of the EDS community? Are they kind of, you know, people are acutely aware of, you know, what going down the opioid route could mean?
Not always. I don't think there's enough education on it and awareness. And I think often one of the things we really encourage with people is to speak to their pharmacist. I think pharmacists are often kind of underappreciated in their drug knowledge, and kind of saying, you know, go and have a conversation with your pharmacist that they can explain the side effects of this medication, the potential of going on this medication. Because, you know, we've all been to the doctor when they say, oh, you know, take this, and we trust them and we go and take it. And that's absolutely fine. But I think there's no harm in digging deeper and finding out more. And it may be that something works for you. We do have people that, you know, opioids have changed their life and they've been able to get on with things, and that's fine. But for a lot of people, it's not. And that's the problem. There has to be an alternative. There has to be a choice, and a choice that's led by that patient, that it's their choice and not the one of those around them.
No, absolutely. I mean, what difference have you seen medical cannabis, you know, make on people's lives with EDS? I mean, how transformative have you seen it be?
I think the biggest one for me is when we first came into the kind of medicinal cannabis world, and I came across a patient who now was off her peg feed, back at work, back at uni, and just thriving. And it was just such a real physical representation of, actually, this has made a really big difference. And similar things when we're seeing those comments and those conversations, and people saying, oh, this is what it's done for me. I've been able to do this. I've been able to go and do the things that I want to do. And as well, people kind of being very honest. Or initially, the dosage when I gone through the private clinic, it wasn't quite right, but we've adjusted it, we've worked with it. And I think giving that information as well, so people know it's not a kind of immediately take this, fixed, all problems gone. You got to work with it, you got to do other things, but that's okay. That's not a problem. You can do that, and you can have the support of the clinics and things, which has been really beneficial. I think, hearing those stories, I think it's always very emotive as well to hear that it's made a big difference.
Do you feel like, again, a slightly different question, do you feel like the clinics are they kind of aware of EDS? And again, I'm a medical cannabis patient myself, and we kind of look on sort of clinics' websites and things like that. And again, they're kind of neurological, you think of psychological, pain relief, other kind of, and obviously, cancer treatment and things like that. You see that as all as kind of, use cases for medical cannabis. Do you feel like they know enough about EDS, or does that kind of fit under, say, like you mentioned pain earlier, does it sort of fit under that kind of bracket a little bit? Or do you feel like there's more could happen for clinics to understand, the cannabis clinics, about EDS?
Yeah, I definitely think there could be more understanding for cannabis clinics. We do have some clinics that we know are very EDS aware.
Yes.
And we've kind of done work with them, and they've done webinars and things, and that's been really great and helpful. So we know
Awesome.
there are some, but it's not all. So if it could be all, that would be much more beneficial from our point of view, especially because it's so complex, especially because it's a condition where you can have all different types of pain, you can have all different types of issues. So it's not a case of coming in with kind of one or two symptoms. It's very vast, and we're aware that that's really difficult. And we know with medics and things, we always say to people, you know, please be patient with your doctors. It's a lot of information to try and know about when they know about hundreds of other conditions as well.
No, absolutely.
A,
I mean, are they kind of? I guess there must be sort of specialists within the NHS as well around EDS.
only a few, unfortunately.
Really?
There's only a handful who are
Wow.
working incredibly hard to try and make a difference. But often where there have been clinics where you could go and get help and where you could go and get assistance, they've been shut down. They don't exist anymore. So for the hypermobile type, it's just kind of drawn this line of, well, where do I go? And the medics aren't sure.
And even though, like you say, it's not a hugely rare condition in the way that other things might be, there's still a sort of lack of general information around EDS. And again, by proxy, cannabis or medical cannabis is a treatment for EDS, I guess. So you're kind of constantly having to advocate for, the work you guys are doing, the needs of your, community, and the benefits of other and medication treatments, including cannabis. So must be a interesting conversation to have with people. Like, what? How did I not know this? Do you feel like that sometimes?
Yeah, it does kind of, have a not been aware of this often comes up, and it's kind of, for a bit of kind of reassurance that not the only one, you won't be the only one. That's, it's not a problem. And I think, the biggest thing for us is just share.
Yes.
And we always say as well, if say you're a patient and you're just finding out about this, involve, advocate for yourself. Like you said, advocate for yourself and allow someone else the space and time to also look at things and also research and also find out, so that they're able to then have accurate information and be able to make decisions from there as well.
Absolutely. I mean, how many sort of patients would you say are actual medical cannabis users that you know of, roughly numbers? I mean, are we talking, sort of tens or, potentially hundreds within the EDS community?
Difficult to say. From what I've kind of seen on our kind of, we've got closed Facebook pages where conversations happen. I'd say probably in the hundreds, potentially. But I'm sure it would probably be less if we did a poll, because I still think people don't want to voice that they're still nervous about that. And also as well, there's a hell of a lot of people that we don't have access to. So, within our kind of 13,000 membership, there's hundreds and thousands of people that have a condition that are not under our radar. So it's a really difficult one to kind of pinpoint, and you're kind of roughly working on kind of the conversation coming out. So kind of a bit of a grey area.
No, for sure. But do you feel like those who are kind of, vocal and, will kind of actively advocate, are they kind of, helping lead the way for treatments like medical cannabis for other patients? Is there a kind of, do you feel like that is kind of happening within, like you say, everything has to be patient-led, other patients kind of advocating to other patients?
Yes. Yeah, and I think that's been a nice position for us as well, to allow those conversations. So someone may kind of say, I've run out of options, I don't know what else to do. And someone will say, have you thought of? I've done this is my experience. And we always say to people, having those peer experiences is really important, and a really good way of kind of them working out, what's going to work for me, what's important, what can make a difference. And also people it then kind of triggers, you see this trigger of comments of someone else going, actually, yeah, I went down this route, I'm under this clinic, this is what I found, this is what I recommend. And we can just watch that conversation unfold. And it's such a natural and organic conversation between peers. It's really lovely to watch. And I think as well, then it's completely unbiased. And I think that's really important as well. It's not a, you must do this, you must take that. It's just, hey, I did this. Make your decision about what you want to do. And people go, oh, I didn't know about that. Well, I'm really glad it helped you. Let me have a look. Let me research. Let me dig a bit deeper.
No, absolutely. No, thank you. It's really interesting to hear your perspective, because I guess it's interesting to speak to someone from outside of what I want to call the cannabis echo chamber in the nicest possible way, because there's a lot of, well, of course it does this, of course it's great, but, you know, from a kind of unbiased perspective, and, you know, talking to people who, you know, rely on medications like this to, you know, transform, you know, their day-to-day life and alleviate their symptoms. And that's really, really encouraging to hear, and hope more people can kind of hear what you're saying and understand that, you know, there are, you know, this is available and it is helping people, so this is the reason to try it. So no, thank you so much for coming on, Sarah, and yeah, I will look forward to speaking to you soon. And the drug science video from the Medical Cannabis Conference will be coming out soon, which you're in, so look forward to seeing you on that as well, because you've got, again, some great points, and yeah, really, really interesting stuff. So thank you so much, and look forward to speaking with you again.
Brilliant. Thanks, Dave. Thanks for having me on as well.